What's up, YouTube? So I decided I want to do a bit of a series, a kind of deep dive into Goa-Trance. So I think this will be interesting for some of the newcomers to production and some of the newcomers to Psytrance who may not know about, the histories and the origins of some of the sounds. So for those that don't know the sort of full history of, where Psytrance came from, Goa-Trance is often referred to as the precursor to Psytrance. It's a genre which sort of became most popular in the early 90s, and it was a sort of amalgamation of regular trance music and acid house music. Due to certain constraints and limitations, due to the fact that computers weren't as powerful as they are nowadays and certain things like that, certain elements became very popular in Goa-Trance. And I want to sort of talk about some of those elements and maybe discuss how they influenced trance music today, and discuss a couple of sound design techniques and stuff which the sort of Goa-Trance guys may have used to create these sort of original sounds from the 90s and stuff like that. So I think one of the sort of major elements that you can really hear in Goa-Trance compared to regular Psytrance is these evolving arpeggiators, MIDI patterns, and melodies and stuff. And I think it's partly due to the fact that, guys didn't have such advanced DAWs and computers and stuff. They weren't able to rely on these sort of editing and sound design techniques to kind of get away with being able to mask certain things in the music itself. So with the original Goa-Trance, there was a lot more, I think, focus on the MIDI and that kind of thing, because that was how you created the sort of progression in your tracks. It was layering the MIDI patterns and evolving the MIDI patterns because, in the studios in the 90s, you only had a certain amount of synths that you could record into your sort of recording medium at one time. And like us nowadays, I think we take for granted, being able to just keep layering and keep layering and keep layering. And often we'll, maybe load up a preset, just use it for a single stab, and then, close the preset and open up another one and use it for another single stab. But to achieve that sort of, technique in the 90s was incredibly difficult, unless you obviously had millions of dollars of studio equipment and hundreds of synths and all sorts of stuff. So you'll find a lot of guys, like I said, really focused on the MIDI and the arrangement and the layering of what they had. And I think it's these limitations which make Goa-Trance so special, because these guys are really pushing the boundaries of what was capable within these really simple products at the time. But also, it's what kind of sets it apart, and it kind of gives it that really specific sound that you can sort of use to differentiate. So obviously, like I said, there are sort of audio differences, and we're going to approach some of those in the upcoming episodes. But I think one thing to kind of take note of and to focus on when, comparing a lot of these older classic Goa-Trance tracks is the sort of beauty in the simplicity of the sounds themselves. And a lot of the really psychedelic effects and stuff are not, really complex waveforms and, cycling through wavetables and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. It's just, processing audio in different ways, using different distortions and different, processing delays in different ways and stuff like that. Like I said, I think that's one of the sort of key aspects of what makes it so recognizable as a genre. So in the 90s, there was only so much choice in terms of gear and software and hardware and stuff like that. So often you'll find a lot of these artists used a lot of the same equipment. And something that's become very apparent in a lot of these Goa-Trance tracks is two instruments in particular. And I'm going to go into some plugins that can get some really, really convincing sounds for those two hardware synths. But for anyone who wants to do a bit of research and stuff like that, the two synths are the Roland TB303 and the Roland SH101. So this was back in the Roland sort of golden age, I like to call it, where I would say, actually just synths in general just had such particular sounds. Each of them sounded so unique that, when you hear Roland TB303 in a track, you can almost instantaneously tell it's a 303, or at least some sort of software emulation of it that's come pretty close. So I think that's one thing that a lot of these synths from back then have different to a lot of the synths nowadays is, technology has advanced so far that synths are trying to cram so much into such little space. And often it's good for the sound designers and stuff like that because the capabilities are endless, but it becomes much harder to achieve these sort of iconic sounds that we've heard from that previous gear that was known for that specific, architecture or something like that. So yeah, I think that's pretty interesting as well. It's just a little bit of extra something I've noticed. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that little bit of background history and a little bit of introduction to this series. Yeah, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. See you guys next time.